Hi friends, we're back! If you've been watching my series of videos about me trying to recreate a wall, you'll see that I've been through a whole series of steps and I think we may have finally cracked it, with a few caveats. I'd love to know what you think. Let me know in the comments below. Since I had last seen you, I was originally planning to review a new mystery preamp, but it turns out the post office had other ideas. Since that didn't work out, I've jumped ahead a step and gone straight to having a new set of pickups and a new preamp, the new most wall-like pickups from Chris Turner, and the new Lusithand Double NFP special. Let me just show you them. Hopefully you can all see this rather lovely new set of pickups here. And of course, on the inside, there is a beautiful new preamp. Isn't it a gorgeous bass though? So, without too much ado, let's hear what it sounds like. Okay, so what did you all think? I'd like to hear from you in the comments. I'd like to talk a little bit about the new setup and why I think it sounds close to a wall and how you can get the same thing for yourselves. The first thing to focus on is the newest flavor of pickups that I've got. Chris Turner has worked really hard on these. His formula for the previous set of pickups that I had was, I think, 8,000 winds of 42 AWG wire per coil. Then you have all those coils wired together in series in a row, and then each row inside of each pickup can then be wired in series or parallel with the other row, or you can even use a single row, much as you would in a conventional humbucker. The new pickups are definitely not the same. Internet lore would have us believe that Wal pickups are 10,000 winds per coil of 42 AWG wire with C8 ceramic magnets and steel keepers. This isn't true. I have it from another pickup manufacturer that it was in fact a British gauge of wire that they originally used that was closer to 42 AWG wire. That probably explains a lot of why many Wal type pickups that I've heard may not be as close to a Wal pickup as one would hope. I'm pleased to say that Chris in his newest formula did use 42.5 AWG wire, 10,000 winds per coil. In fact, I think maybe just slightly over that, but around about 10,000 winds per coil, C8 ceramic magnets, and steel keepers. Now, you ask me, does all this nerdery make a difference? Yes. Tonally, it does make a huge difference. I think you can hear that. The second point I want to touch on is the wiring of the pickup. This time around, I asked Chris to make the pickup so that instead of having a row of 4 coils sensing, instead we would flip it around vertically, so you would have 2 coils sensing per string. And each pair of coils would have an independent output that would have to be going out to be managed by the electronics of the bass. With a preamp that buffers each individual output from each coil pair, it gives you the closest possible wiring that you're going to get that mimics what's inside of a Wal custom bass. And that brings me to my next topic, the preamp. The Lusithand Double NFP Special is currently, I think, the closest preamp to a Wal preamp that is commercially available. Firstly, it has the necessary buffering to deal with each of the coil pair outputs, and I don't know of anyone else presently doing this, although I'm aware that somebody may be bringing something to the market soon. Secondly, I know that Nuno has worked hard to tweak the Lusithand Double NFP Special so that the frequency range for each of the pickups is slightly different and mimics what happens in a Wal. For the front pickup, the frequency range is 100 Hz up to 4 kHz, and for the rear pickup, the frequency range is 200 Hz up to 4 kHz. That's slightly wider than what you'll find in a Wal. A Wal is typically only up to about, I think, 2.5 or 3 kHz, but it's the closest that I think that people are making presently. There are some quirks though, and some differences that you can hear between the two instruments. The first thing is that for each of the filters, there is a stock amount of boost that happens as you sweep the filter through the range. On the Lusithand, I think it's around 3 decibels, I think, as far as I can tell. And Wal say on their website that their stock boost is more around 5 decibels. Subtle, but it is there. That might contribute to some of the differences that you hear when we sweep the frequency knobs through their ranges. There's a slight difference to the kind of wah noise that you can hear. Furthermore, there's a difference in how the preamps handle the high end. The Wal has quite a clever arrangement, and it probably suited the speaker technology of the time. I don't think when they were invented there were a lot of tweeters or high end in a lot of speakers. The Wal preamp rolls off all the highs above about 3 kHz. And if you want to add them back in, you have to use a switch that's built into the volume knob and activate what's called a pick attack. The pick attack boosts significantly around about 6 kHz or so, according to my studies using the frequency analyzer. And funnily enough, it takes that signal for adding the treble back in, not from the bridge pickup, but from the neck pickup. Now, coming back to the Lusithand Double NFP Special, it's got a little bit more treble baked in just from the get-go. And that kind of gives you a slightly different way that you can add treble back in. Since Nuno doesn't build in a pick attack into his preamp, the way that you can add treble back into the circuit is to simply turn up each of the knobs. A 10 on the front pickup on the Wal, turning it all the way up, letting all the treble in, is about the same as setting it to 8 on the front pickup on my Wal-ish bass. And on the rear pickup, a 10 is about a 6 on the Wal-ish bass. That means if you want to add treble back in using the Double NFP Special, you can either turn up the front pickup from 8 to 10, or you can turn up the rear pickup from 6 to 10, or any mixture of both. That actually turns out to be quite flexible, and in live use, I really quite like it. Because the two preamps handle treble differently, I don't think you can ever quite get them exactly the same sounding, but you can get very, very close indeed. And until the day that somebody is able to replicate the Wal preamp exactly, which is going to be pretty difficult because it uses out-of-date components that I don't think you can source anymore, this, I think, is the best solution that I've found to date. I thought it might be useful to talk about some of the things that I've learned during this build. It's been about 2 years or so that I've been at this. Thank you for your patience. I know it's been a long go of it. But there are some lessons I've taken away from this whole experiment. The first thing that I think is the most important is the pickups. It has to be the pickups. You can't quite divorce the pickups from the preamp in the case of a Wal, but I will say that there are different types of Wals out there, some of which don't have a preamp, which still sound like a Wal. I think that comes back to getting the pickup construction exactly right. The pickups obviously need to be in the right locations. I'll add a link to that information in comments below, and I'll also put up some information on screen about where pickups tend to sit in Wals. The early Wals kind of had a slightly, I think, eyeball approach to where pickups sat, which is kind of reassuring when you're trying to copy a Wal, because it means there may be a bit of leeway in where you put the pickups. That said, they do have certain ranges about where they sit, and in particular, the rear pickup is really quite close to the bridge, much closer to the bridge than on many, many other basses. Second thing that is absolutely key is getting the right preamp. I like the Lusithand Double NFP Special because in addition to having all of the good qualities that I've pointed out before, it also has another key one, which is that it adds a certain amount of grit or harmonic distortion to the sound. And that is absolutely key to copying the sound of a Wal as well. Other preamps I've heard of or have tried, the ACG one for instance, are very clean sounding, and while you can add the grit back in, I kind of feel it's nice just to have it built in to the circuit, and then you don't have to think about having a pedal or what have you. You can just plug in, record, and it's there. The next thing that made a massive difference is the fingerboard. It's probably why Wals aren't generally made with anything apart from ebony or rosewood. Through my own experiments, turns out when I swapped the neck around, a Fender style neck with a maple fretboard for a Fender style neck with a rosewood fretboard, it made a huge difference sonically. Not only that, I think it matters how the neck is constructed. A single piece maple neck with a fingerboard on front does sound different to a multi-laminate neck with a fingerboard on the front. And again, there's one of the videos where I've made a new neck for the instrument where I do show a difference in the sound. I think it makes the mids speak more clearly. And I think it's probably a reason why you'll see a lot of modern double humbucker basses have necks that are made out of multi-laminate construction. Finally, the body. I've got to admit, I really didn't hear a huge amount of difference swapping from an alder body to a mahogany body with a maple top. I know that some of you out there did. That's great. But for me, the differences were minor at most. I can hear some of you saying, right, Pete, if I'm going to make my own, how do I do it as economically as possible? If I was starting over and I had a budget of $1,000 or £1,000, I would buy the pickups and preamp first. So I'd go to Chris Turner, I'd get the right pickups, and I'd go to Lusithand and I'd buy the Double NFP special. That will be the bulk of your spend. That's a good £600. Then I would look for a donor body to stick it into. I've done some researching around, and I think the Yamaha basses probably are some of the best donor instruments that I could find. In particular, the TRBX series. These have mahogany bodies, they have multi-laminate necks with rosewood fretboards, electronics cavities already carved out and shielded, they have a separate battery box, and they have 4 knobs. So you don't have to do any drilling or any woodwork to get the right electronics cavity. You can just get going with that. Once I had all that, I'd take it to the luthier of my choice. I'd have him carve out the pickup roots in the right spots, and then I would take it out and play it. You would have, I think, for about £1,000 or $1,000 spend, you would have an instrument that will sound as near to a Wal as it's possible to get with modern technology, which is actually pretty darn close. There's 2 things that I would try and do a little bit differently myself on my particular build. I lost a bit of my courage when I was laying out where the pickups were on my instrument, and I ended up moving the rear pickup about 9 or 10 mils, a centimeter, further away from the bridge than it would be on a Wal. Again, just because I thought it looked nice and was a bit more symmetrical. I probably should have had the courage to put it back even further. I'm very happy with what I've achieved anyway, but I think that would have just added that final bit. The second thing is that I think we've got to try and find a source for knobs for the Lusithand Double NFP preamp. I know that Nuno was trying to source some. I had huge troubles in doing so, but the pickle is that there's no knob that I found that has the same numbering that matches the exact travel that's on those pots. I've got it set up so that the numbers line up at 10 when you've turned everything up, but when I turn it down, I go beyond 0 as the lowest point that I can turn down to. If we could find a knob that matches the exact amount of travel that's on the potentiometer, I think we could get a more accurate way of sharing settings between people. So friends, that's it. Thanks very much for sticking with me over the last couple of years as I've researched this and worked my way through different preamps and tried to come up with solutions. As new pickups and preamps become available, I'll test them out and record them and report back to you. But for now, I think this is as good as I can do with current tech. And it turns out to be pretty darn good. I'm just going to play it and enjoy it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys again next time. Bye for now.